You'd like to see clouds again? Something that, you think is easy, but it's not. And if you guys jumped on my oversized hibiscus that I just finished, again, I was working on wet. And I'm trying to dissect things, and I'm going, why is it that they're so challenged with the clouds? I think it's because you guys may be not working fast enough. And then also lately, I've been really embracing blending gel, guys. Gotta try it. It definitely keeps your paint open longer, wet, right? Especially for these wet on wet types, right? So these would be the two important mediums that you might want to invest in, right? For different reasons. This one's definitely our standard one we use, but the blending gel definitely does give you some advantages when you want things to stay wet longer. Now, if I would have chose the blending gel earlier to do this, I would have been able to take my time a little bit more, like the light green. Right, I would have had more open time. I would have been able to enjoy myself a little bit more because I wouldn't have felt so stressed to hurry up and do it before the paint dries. So definitely these mediums are your friends. They also can be your enemies, right? So sometimes people put way too much of these mediums in their brushes or even sponges. Right, so we like to put two colors on our sponges or brushes. We put, wherever we can multi-load, we're going to definitely multi-load. Right, and when you're working on these cardstocks, guys, it's definitely dry and it does suck in that paint weird, right? So remember, when you're just playing and practicing, you're going to get way better experience on a canvas than trying to practice clouds on paper. Okay, that just doesn't happen as easy, right? And I'm gonna kind of give you a little bit of a insight on these clouds here that some of you have been asking me about. Okay, so we're starting our sky. I've got a bunch of different projects, guys. You guys can jump on and get some different variations of different clouds. All right, we've got two colors on our sponge. We're going to multi-load them, right? Don't put a lot of pressure on it. Just very lightly blend that paint on the outside of the sponge, because what I find too is when I've been working with all these kids doing paint parties now, they're pushing too hard and you're shoving all the paint inside the sponge. And then you have to even press harder to get it back out. So if you put it on very lightly, on the outside of your sponge, more often keep picking up fresh paint. You don't have to work so hard and press so hard to get the colors to come. Right, so I think this is one of the things too that took me some time to even figure out. You might see some of my really old projects. I was probably pushing too much back then. And then the more we play, guys, the purpose of this is definitely the more you play, the more you get aha moments. And there's just only so much that you can absorb at one time, right? So you definitely got to keep playing and trying new things. Okay, so I'm just kind of playing around with a real modeled kind of sky, right? It's not over mixed. And then slowly I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the one side. Maybe I want a little bit of a darker gradient to come down. So by the time we finish doing all of our background of our sky, maybe we're doing a really big canvas. A lot of times this is almost dry by the time we get to the top. Okay, so I'm just going to stop here so I have somewhere to hold. Alright, so by the time we get up here, we're kind of adding some more white, and we're trying to get that white in there, right? You're just using the edge of the sponge. This is my favorite way of doing clouds, right? But if you're already starting to dry, maybe you're getting this color that's not blending, right? So what I found out is that you almost have to wake up this area here again, make sure that it's really good and wet, right, with your darker blues. So maybe you need to come and add some more dark blue. By the time you get down here, you want to come back and start adding your clouds, right? So now I've re-wet this. So now when I go to put my white edges in there, see how much softer they are now? You see the difference between trying to get it on that background that's already started to dry and trying to shove it into more wet on wet. I pick up some fresh paint, right, so that you can get those little edges. Okay, so this is just like the illusion of the top parts of a cloud. Okay, but you see how they're a little bit softer because you're working it into a darker blue that's still wet. Right, instead of depending on the blue in here to try to soften things. Right, so that's one of the big aha moments I've gotten lately with more cloud work. And then I like to flip my canvas around sometimes to get the undersides of my clouds to look too. All right, so we got Miss Ann coming in. Another one of my VIPs. Thank you ladies for all coming and joining us. Right, so again, sometimes we like to have little layers. Right, but this is starting to dry now, so it's not letting me blend as nice. Right, get a little bit of medium in there maybe. When you've already got your color down, then you can add maybe, and it's dry, you know, maybe you can add just a little bit of medium in there with your color. And then come back in with those clouds. Right, you see how it's merging with the wet blue background? Just wake it up. That's the thing that I think that a lot of you guys might be not catching the connection. You're seeing my speed is very much quicker than yours might be. And so I can definitely think that that's probably the problem is you're trying to work on dry background blue. And it's not merging the same way. Does that make sense for you guys that need the cloud questions? Yeah, wet on wet. It's definitely some more of that wet on wet, right? You see how Donna works so fast and definitely has its advantages, right? And if we're not working that fast, maybe we're going on to an area that's already dry. And she loves doing her wet on wet, right? She doesn't even let her centers of her rose dry. She just goes right in there and pushes that paint into the wet, right? And keeps going. So when we're not getting that wet on wet, that's where we might be having some problems with those clouds.
Mandy, sometimes when I do my background, I use floating medium to help spread it.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes the floating medium takes the paint off. And then I always have that spot there that I can't repaint over.
Yeah, because it's not quite dry. It's starting to get sticky, and then when you went on it too wet, you pulled the paint up. So definitely, I would blow dry it, and then keep adding more paint in that little spot.
I do, but it never seems to cover it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You're maybe pushing too hard. You got to lay it on a little bit softer touch.
Okay.
And leave.
I have the same problem. When I do that, it takes it off and then it's really hard to cover afterwards.
Yeah, as soon as I catch that one little spot that I'm like, oh, it's starting to pull off, I stop and let it dry and then go over and do another layer if I have to. Because there is some parts where if you're working on a big canvas, you're working your way down. This top part where you started was starting to definitely get tacky. And if you have thick paint on top of thick paint, that thick paint will definitely pull it up. So another thing, another awareness is that once you have thick paint down, definitely you can add a little bit more medium in there, and then the more runny paint will sit on top of the thick paint a little bit better too. Right, and it's just a very light touch. Try to leave it and not go over it too many times. Keep moving yourself down as you're working. Right, so maybe you need to work a little bit slower from the top so that you're happy with each section before you go down, so that you don't have to go back and on top of it again. Right, so just keep adding more paint, right? Make sure you're happy with that area before you move down. Because if you're not totally happy, by the time you get back to it, then you're starting to pull it up again.
Would using the blending gel be better than to do a background?
It has its differences too. Definitely is something that you got to play with a little bit and get to know it. If you put that little bit too much medium sometimes in any of them, right, you can easily put too much blending gel too. But there is advantages, especially if you guys saw the Northern Lights, right? I used blending gel for that. And I was using another brush to feather things out, right? I really wanted that blending gel to stay wet so that I can move those streaks of my Northern Lights up, right? Soften it into the wet background. So yeah, there's a little bit of variations. You know, sometimes I like it to be dry so that I can go in and darken some areas, right, and layer it.
What color is that blue?
This is a cobalt.
Cobalt?
Yeah, cobalt blue and white. It's like our crayon blue or standard blue. Right, so again, we got to get a little bit more of that dark in there. Because we can't have highlights with highlights without shadows. Right, getting that dark in there, and then moving the light on top of it. Putting the dark underneath it, right, helps the lighter colors come out. Okay, so sometimes I see you guys doing your clouds and you're just kind of pushing too hard and you're just over mixing. Right, so it depends on what kind of clouds you're trying to make, right? How dark and light you want your skies, but definitely just a lot of people are forgetting about getting that dark in there so that you can layer over it. That kind of makes sense for your clouds. Sure. Lots of fun and easy projects in the club now, guys. It's $15 a month, and it automatically, once you sign up once, you don't have to keep signing up for things every month. It's just the membership will actually just go and renew on its own every month on your anniversary date. And then every month there'll be a brand new project that you guys can join us on. A lot of my easy ones there, my Blue Moon, there's By the Lake, there's a bunch of different really fun and easy landscapes that I've done now. So you guys can jump on and play around with these clouds a little bit more. And then some of the very, very easy strokes are in those classes as well. Right, to keep you doing something fun and not always just working. Because the first 5 courses is all about the stroke work. So there's some small, really fun and easy assignments in there that you guys can jump and play on too. And the bonus ones as well. There's a full painting for the wildflowers with all the bugs that you guys can jump on and have fun with it as you're learning to get a little bit harder and harder as you keep moving through the program.